Listen only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Magic Software webinar, Building Effective Mobile Business Screens. So I'm Tom Hutchins, Marketing Manager for Magic Software UK, Ireland and Nordics. I'm joined by our technical expert Joe Da Silva. So the purpose of today's session is really to explain some of the things that we've found over the years make mobile business screens and applications more user-friendly. It's a bunch of design and user experience tips and tricks. I'm going to give you a quick introduction to the concept of mobile context first, which is really to say, here's where your users are, what they're trying to achieve, and why these different contexts actually mean that they might want their applications to run a different way. And then Joe's going to take over and show you how you can actually achieve this. So, Magic Software has been around for 30 years. We do innovative technology and focus on your business needs. We operate in over 50 countries, serving over 2,500 global partners from our 15 offices, which are located across North and South America, through Europe, South Africa, and into Asia. So, the purpose of context is really to adapt to the different channels that people are using today. We're no longer in a world of purely mainframes and desktop PCs. Now we've got tablets, smartphones, various internet browsers, and increasingly social media. And users are trying to access a much wider range of data. Even in the enterprise world, it's not just a few big systems. Increasingly, companies have very varied IT estates and often need to connect to more cloud services as well as big corporate legacy solutions. What we're really after is giving an ability to work across multiple contexts, multiple channels, with everything being adapted and integrated. It's going a bit beyond HTML5. We're really talking about developing with a platform that's going to handle the heavy lifting for you. And that's really important because of context, and the context that your user is in. So we don't want to worry about devices, the tools. We don't want to be worrying about the platforms, the ecosystems. That's to say that really the type of smartphone, the type of tablet that people are using really shouldn't matter. What we're concerned about is whether they're using a smartphone or tablet or PC, and where and when, because those two go hand in hand with how our users are actually trying to work and what they're trying to accomplish at the time. It's all about delivering functionality based on the context. So for how we got here of course being this very opposed world where we have users on one side who have their consumer consumption devices, and the enterprise world where everything's really this process-driven, structured and strongly controlled environments. There's a massive gulf between the two, because one side is saying flexibility, mobility, I want to do my work where I want, when I want, how I want. And on the other side, the enterprise is saying, well, we have a certain amount of security and compliance that we have to follow. So can we bridge this gap? Actually, yes, we can, because all we're trying to do is present the same workflows across different devices. The challenge of multi-channel is to do with the fact that users are trying to work differently on different devices because of, for instance, the input. So one of the things that we'll be showing you today is how to actually lay out your screens based on the way the user's angle of thumb movement, for instance, might go. Different devices are used very differently with different type of input device, different numbers of fingers, depending on, even on touchscreens. They'll be used in different locations. You'll have more or less time and willingness to deal with frustrating interfaces before trying something else. And different numbers of people can easily work on the same device. And we want everything to be handled with single development effort. We don't want to be rebuilding everything for different ecosystems and different device sizes. We just want to be creating the business logic and saying this is what we need to do, and let the actual application development platform handle the coding heavy lifting. And there's far more requirements. Even today we're really focusing on the user experience. We need it to be intuitive and native and offer offline support. But today data has to be integrated and easily accessed. Modifications need to be made rapidly to deal with emerging trends. Everything has to be secured, and particularly in the enterprise world, strong management tools are vital. So we need a holistic view. We need far more than just a view of here's a phone, here's an app, go and do some work with it. We really need to be able to cater for the context, support different device sizes, do everything with one development effort, full back-end integration, and to have security, monitoring and management built in. We really need a platform that's going to handle the applications. And with a platform, we can cater for the user's context. Take business processes, figure out what users are trying to do at each point, determine the logic of how you want things to be presented, and then actually show the same workflow very differently on different device types. So that's it for context. I just going to hand over to Joe, who is going to show you some tips on what you can do and how Magic can help you with this. Joe, go ahead, please.
Okay. Hopefully you can hear me okay and see my screen as well.
Yes, everything's fine, thank you.
Tom, can you confirm voice and screen?
Yes, Joe, everything's fine.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so let's discuss a few things regarding the building of mobile screens. And just as an introduction point, I'd like to understand what exactly are you after, if you want to create an application either for yourself or for your company, or even to sell it for internal use. So it would be interesting if you could give us a feedback what is your main area of concern. What the challenges that we normally want to address is to provide access from multiple devices to any critical business process that you might have in-house. So I'm going to give you an example soon, but imagine that you have whatever day-to-day activity that the company is providing, and that needs to be interfaced with a user from a mobile device, like the example Tom mentioned a few minutes ago regarding the context. Today we are going to try to discuss a few ideas to provide the focus on the experience for those mobile situations and scenarios. And normally what you're trying to address is the business need or pressure to support multiple devices. So how would you go about designing screens and presenting that to the user to give them a nice experience? I'm going to start giving you an example. So this will be an example that possibly resonate with a situation that you might have in-house. So imagine that we have a purchase order event. So this is a PO that arrives on your ERP system. This triggers a process of validation. There's a workflow, there's a budget related, and that also needs to be checked against a CRM system and then present a result on a mobile device. So what's the situation? An event happened in one application backend system. There's a business process that needs to be applied, and then something goes to a mobile device. The real case will be, let's say, a manager that's outside on the move and needs to make a decision on top of that information. That information needs to be presented in a way that makes sense for that specific decision, regardless of which system actually the information is sitting, and is presented in a way that allows the decision but consistent. It is consistent, and it again doesn't matter where which system the information is coming from. So this is the scenario. Imagine that situation. So what we can extract that to allow this user to actually make a decision. If we extract the parts that are involved here and try to imagine a pattern that we can apply to multiple situations, this will be it. The first part is a business event happening. So we have a situation, there's a business event, in this case is a PO. From that business event, we need to apply specific business rules that normally involve multiple layers of systems, data, or services. And then we have a specific focused result to present to the user. So if we think about this and how many times this will repeat, that will give us a good starting point to deal with a nice solution that is focused and cross those boundaries and allow or provide the business solution that we intend to. Normally, how would you resolve it? What is the traditional way of resolving this? We have some sort of integration SOA architecture, and we have to create one mobile solution per platform, or use something like HTML5 that is more generic, allows develop once, deploy many, but it tends to force the same look and feel. It doesn't matter which mobile platform the users are accessing, they will have the same experience, same control, same look and feel, which might be interesting in some cases, but normally users are expecting to have a device-specific experience, meaning that for when accessing from an iOS, you want to see the iOS controls, you want to see the iOS navigation, which is quite different from the Android, for example, and that the Android users would expect their own way to navigate through things. So that implies that you have to create multiple versions normally to achieve that, and that all the implications of that in complexity, time, cost, and risk. Now, normally what the solution you would want to apply would be to use an integration platform to cross all those internal backend systems and extract information you need to present on the mobile. And you use a mobile platform that supports all those channels that you want to deploy your application or allow your users to interact with a specific solution that you're trying to resolve. So this tends to be much simpler, much faster, and less expensive. In either case, we need to always involve designers and think about the flow of the application, not only the look and feel, but how things are presented in a way that are usable. And that also brings the consideration of apps versus applications. What we have traditionally as an application is quite large, quite fat, in the sense that the users need to be trained, the users need specific license, a process, they need to be an expert on that application. Whereas an app is much more focused, much more related to the action you're trying to achieve and the task that you want to resolve and cross boundaries between systems. So these differences are important and come into play when we start moving from traditional application development to a more mobile focus. One important point here is to extract whatever you have underneath in terms of devices or systems or data sources and focus on the business needs and the devices you want to present. So try to stay afloat of that iceberg, and which is the top of my triangle there. In the sense of the presentation, you can focus on the presentation layer and use the integration platform to combine the processes and validate those processes behind the scenes, and then deploy on one or multiple devices according to your need. And as Tom mentioned, important that you contextualize that and make use of some specific device features and to facilitate or make more sense for your application. Let's start discussing a few points then. What would be the typical thing that goes into a mobile application development that you wouldn't have traditionally on application development? The first one is the screen location, or where to put things on a screen that makes sense for a mobile device. So you have in this example here a heat map that shows where things are easily reached, as opposed to the positions where it's harder to reach. In this case, with a phone, the user typically will be using the thumb to navigate. So this tends to be the typical example, considering a right-handed person. So that will be an equivalent for a left-handed as well. But these are areas that where you want to put things that the user can quickly react to. So these are things that we should consider. So the interaction that allows a more natural movement, and the users will normally use the thumb. So you can use left or right-handed people, depending on what you want to support and what you can allow the people to set on the application preferences. And sometimes using also the both thumbs. For example, I'll give you an example, one that might make sense and you want to support that. But it's important that you consider the natural movement of a gesture, and in this case look at those arrows where things tend to be easier versus where they tend to be much harder. And talking about using your thumb, you also need to consider this in terms of the size of the widgets that you put on the screen, like buttons, and there's a specific recommendation for what's touchable and what's enough to be manipulated with the thumb, and using not making them too small, or that they will be mixed up, either touching on the wrong place or not reaching that properly. And talking of which, let's consider buttons. So buttons, and you have an example here. The first thing we need to consider is the location and how easy it is to reach and touch. And sometimes to have a clear indication of where to touch, and if you look at my screenshot example here, you can clearly identify where the buttons are. There's a space between the buttons, and it makes quite clear where to touch. So there is this recommendation of avoiding less than 1 centimeter square. That will be a very tiny button to use with a thumb. And consider some space around and a clear contrast. So in my screenshot here is trying to demonstrate that. That's very clear where the buttons are in terms also of contrast. And sometimes you want to also add a text besides the icon to identify the application or the action that the user will get by activating that specific button. And last, but also important, is to use or make use, or it makes sense to organize things by importance as well. Our next point is to keep it simple and consistent. The first consideration is to avoid the kind of a surprise. It should be more organized in terms of a consistent presentation that will let the users clearly expect, or the application is in sync with the user expectation. And here's a counter example where there are different expectations for depending on which role. So this is an example that do I always have a video, don't have a video, where's the video? So making that stop and think is what we're trying to avoid. It's the cognitive burden that we give in the user. And if you're on the move, you're on the mobile screen, which is small, you're walking, you don't want that to happen. So try to keep consistent, and consistency will help in that regard. The next point is the color scheme to facilitate the navigation, to make it pleasant and attractive to use your application, and that will be critical for users to actually use the application, go back to it, or recommend it. And again, the level of contrast that you put on the screens will be very important, which again, if you're not a designer, you might want to involve a designer. That will be a good investment. And sometimes you also want to denote your brand or identify your app by making use of those criteria to memorize or to fix on the mind of the user the things about your application and its usability, and make the users comfortable by using your application. There's a whole metrics that you can use to evaluate that, how much of your application is actually being used and how many times the users go back, which should give you a good metric or real evaluation of how much you have achieved by measuring that. And the navigation should be very important. You know that for each, or you probably know that for each platform, the back buttons have to the expectation is different. So for iOS and for Android, for example, going back from where you are, two different navigations, two different expectations on how to do that, and the platform should facilitate that, allow you not having to program this on every screen, because this is consistent behavior. So a good platform will allow you to navigate and provide that back functionality, for example, out of the box. The next point is to show maybe what's more important first. In the example here, let's say you're providing stories, so you might want to put on the top what's more relevant. There are a few calculations that you can do in terms of what's more relevant, what has more usage, more interest, depending on the application that you're using, or the last actions that the users are doing, or what's more frequently being used. So there are many ways to classify or reorganize things by importance and allow the users to take immediate action, because what's more important, what's more common might be floating and it's easier to access. The next point is to give users clear direction. So when they're navigating, what to do next, how many items there are, or how many steps. I'll give you two examples here. So this screen, I really don't know what's next, or it's a bit confusing, whereas this one, the design work applied to this were very carefully considered, and it provides a much better indication and also a much more pleasant experience. So this design might be a very good investment also to your application, besides just providing what the business requested in terms of task-oriented feature. And the last point is about the menus. Menus seems to be back to application Windows development, but they're still quite useful. And here you have an example of Google Mail or Gmail that still provide a menu by touching a button that opens up a list of menus. Facebook also uses this as consistent, or Salesforce. So it's becoming kind of expected or understandable way to navigate, and useful as well. And you can consistently use that option to provide more navigation. So these are a few points that I hope you serve for you to at least go out there, do some more research, involve a bit more your designer, and consider while you're creating your screen. To wrap up, I just wanted to do a quick comment in terms of what about the data, what about the information that you need to present, and how do you solve that. So to bridge all the other systems that you want to present, bring data, allow the users to change data, you would need to do quite a bit of work in terms of accessing the applications, making the data validate, or making the authentication, security. There's quite a lot to consider there. And the integration platform that you use might be critical. And in our case, we provide a list of connectors that you can use to access any backend system, any service, or any application, or any code that you might have already in-house, and wrap that in a way that is easily accessible from the mobile device or from the mobile services you want to provide. And that's consistent because it's easy to design any process. It's all drag and drop and visual, so you can drag those connectors I showed you on the previous slide, and by defining the order, the data that's passed through, you quickly create the process that you want to provide, and how the response should be sent back to the mobile devices. These are all done per application, for example, through widgets, so there's no code involved in that process, and that's also true to access your existing applications. Even existing legacy applications can also be done the same way. Or very large systems, we have a specialized connector like Salesforce and SharePoint that quickly allows you to access those systems or the data in those systems and provide that in a mobile experience. To summarize, so our consideration would be here multi-platform, enterprise integration, native clients who provide a much more native experience for your customers, for whomever your users you're targeting with your app, and multiple form factors, because you have all the list of different devices, screen sizes, resolutions, etc. And sometimes even you might want to do a hybrid, because you might have a very nice functionality in HTML5, for example, or that you want to embed on the native application, so you might want to do that as well, and a good platform should support that. In our case, we also support offline mode, meaning that if you need to create an app that will work when there are disconnected scenarios, like intermittent, or even work a few days and then come back and listen back, you can also implement that for any mobile application or situation. In summary, we have a mobile platform, Magic XP A, that allows you to create all those screens that I've mentioned. The Magic XPI is the integration part that allows you to then connect the backend systems. We also have an MDM if you are supporting bring your own device policies. That might be something that you want to have a look at. And if you need to develop anything, we can also do that through our professional services. Thank you very much. I just invite you now to try download the platform and any training material. If you want a quick starting point, just get a free session. We can build a proof of concept for you or with you and evaluate any current project that you might have that want to evaluate, does it worth it doing, how much can cost, how much time, etc. We can quickly do a prototype for those projects and give you a quick overview. Or if you're a partner trying to expand in terms of mobile capability or solutions that you have there, also talk to us and see how we can help. I'm wrapping up, so I'll send you back to Tom in case you have any questions. Please use the chat window. Tom might have questions already, I'm not sure, but we're not in the same room. But thank you very much. Thanks for your time. Tom.
Thank you, Joe. So we do have a question around the offline, saying that different applications require different ways of handling offline. Do you have any particular recommendations in how to go about building this?
Yes, in terms of the development itself, there's one thing that creating the screens, etc., that tends to be quite generic, should I say. What we need to think is in terms of what are the scenarios that you want to support for your offline application and how you want to sync, how you want to resolve conflict. Once you have decided that platform or pattern, that process, let's call it, and our platform supports multiple patterns, so you can design your own or use one of the predefined ones, but the important bit here is decide, think about what the scenarios offline scenarios that you want to support, design them, and we're very likely to be able to very quickly using the parameter settings, the default behavior, implement those scenarios.
Thank you, Joe. So that's all the questions we have at the moment. So just like to thank you all for turning up. I hope you enjoyed the session, and a big thank you to Joe for running the demo, and I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you and goodbye.